After nearly 10 days in deep space, Christina Koch came home with a message that was bigger than the mission itself. At the first public welcome after Artemis II, she said the trip changed how she thinks about the word crew, and she ended with a line aimed not just at NASA, but at everyone on Earth. On April 11, 2026, Koch returned to Houston after Artemis II and used her first public remarks to explain why the view back at Earth stayed with her. Before we get into the timeline, subscribe, like, and share to support Starline Daily for more verified updates and trending stories that matter. Artemis II launched on April 1st from NASA's Kennedy Space Center and splashed down on April 10th off the coast of San Diego after a roughly 10-day lunar flyby. NASA describes it as the first crewed Artemis flight and the first human trip to the moon's vicinity in more than half a century. The mission also carried historic firsts for the crew, with Koch becoming the first woman, Victor Glover the first black astronaut, and Jeremy Hansen the first non-US citizen to take part in a lunar mission. That is the scale of the mission. But Koch's remarks focused less on hardware and records than on what the experience felt like. In Houston, she described crew as something deeper than a job title or a roster. She said the journey reshaped that word into something defined by shared needs, sacrifice, grace, and constant connection. Looking back at Earth, she said what struck her most was not only the beauty of the planet, but the darkness around it, which made Earth feel even more precious. Her closing line was simple and memorable. Planet Earth, you are a crew. One reason those remarks landed so strongly is that Koch framed the mission through small human details. In her public comments, she said the journey began with a quiet launch confirmation from her mission manager and ended with a nurse on the recovery ship asking for a hug. That gave the story a very different tone from a standard victory lap. Instead of treating Artemis II like a list of technical milestones, she presented it as a chain of human moments that started on Earth, went all the way to the moon, and returned home changed. The mission itself still mattered enormously. NASA says Artemis II tested Orion's life support systems with astronauts aboard for the first time, included manual piloting demonstrations, and gathered science data meant to help future lunar missions. During the flyby, the crew reached a record-setting farthest distance of 252,756 miles from Earth and passed about 4,067 miles above the lunar surface at closest approach. In other words, Koch's speech came after a mission designed not just to inspire, but to prove that NASA's deep space systems can carry people safely toward the next phase of lunar exploration. Koch also did not arrive at this moment as an unknown face. Before Artemis II, NASA already described her as a record-setting astronaut who spent 328 consecutive days in space and took part in the first all-female spacewalk. Artemis II added another defining chapter to that career. This was her second flight to space, but it put her in a different category historically, because she became the first woman to fly on a lunar mission in the modern era of NASA's moon program. That larger career context helps explain why her remarks carried so much weight once the crew was back on the ground. There was also an emotional undercurrent running through the mission before the crew ever got home. During the lunar flyby, the astronauts proposed names for two craters, including Carol, in honor of Commander Reed Wiseman's late wife. NASA and multiple public reports described that as one of the mission's most personal moments. That matters because it fits the same theme Koch returned to in Houston. Artemis II was historic because of distance, technology, and symbolism, but it was also historic because the crew kept translating a major spaceflight into something recognizably human. As of the latest official update, the clearest status is that Artemis II completed its flight successfully. The crew is back in Houston, and NASA has shifted into post-flight reconditioning, medical evaluations, and debriefs. The next big public question is how the lessons from this mission will shape Artemis III and the larger pushback towards sustained lunar operations. For now, Christina Koch's most lasting takeaway may be the one she offered almost immediately after landing, that seeing Earth from deep space made human connection look less abstract and more urgent. Thanks for watching, and thank you for supporting Starline Daily.